Hello, everyone. So, this is something that I normally don't do as far as sharing a lot of personal things on social media. But as most of you who really know me knows that my passion is to be able to help others. And a lot of times we use social media for business purposes or when we're journeying with our weight and things like that. So something took place with me over the course of the past couple of days. And it was something that really opened my eyes to something that I needed to deal with. And I'm going to try my best to get through this without crying, but it may not happen, so just bear with me. But I have been out of a committed relationship for 15 years. So August of 2005 would have been my last real true relationship. And I went through a lot in the course of that 15 years, which prompted me to realize that I needed to focus on myself and focus on my kids and my career. And unfortunately, it didn't go in that order. When I moved here in 2003, my goals were to come here, pursue real estate, and I was going to model and things like that because I had lost, weight and was wanting to model. And so I had these big dreams, right? And so I get here and I get in a relationship, and that went on for 3 years. And so it was, yeah. So anyway, being single, during that time, and I learned a lot of things about myself. And usually when I go through things, I usually try my best to figure out what is the message in it, so that I can grow and be better. And so I took that time that I thought, to kind of heal from that relationship because that one was the one that sucked the complete life out of me. I know that you've all probably experienced that where there's one that just completely turns you inside out and you don't even know who you are by the time you're done dealing with it. So that was the case here with that situation. And what I did not realize is that even though I was a good woman and I was able to bring some great things to that individual and help him grow, which we later talked about down the line, I still had some really bad things that I needed to work through. And that being insecurities and lack of trust, and, which then also goes into jealousy. And, just if he wasn't in my face, I didn't trust him worth of nothing. And then when he would do certain things, that would also, buy into my thought process. So, anyway, fast forward, end up dating, and those situations weren't successful. End up having a child, and kind of being left to raise her by myself. So 10 out of those 15 years, I've been raising a child once again. So with parenting being so important, and then the things going on, just the different transitions that life has to offer during the course of that time, I always felt like having a relationship was just something that wasn't, in the forecast. So I kind of disconnected and kind of took myself off the market and just kind of stayed to me. Let me focus on me getting right. Let me work. Let me do what I need to do, and let me raise this child. Because at the end of the day, I made the choice to proceed with having a child and not having the right normal setup. Not to say two parent households are always the best, because they're not. healthy environments are what's best. Just because we're with the parent of the child doesn't mean that that child is being raised in a healthy environment. So my thought process is I've raised two by myself, so I'll raise this other one and I will give her the best that I can of me and also make sure that her environment is healthy. So that's been my priority. Me, my career, and making sure that I'm being there for my child. Because again, I'm left to be a mother by myself and raise this child by myself. And that's my choices. So I dated a guy about 4.5 years ago and, really liked him. Met him on an online dating site, which I know a lot of people use those today, but I did. I was working a lot of crazy hours, and I had moved back here to Georgia and found myself without a job for some time, for about 11 months. So during that time, I felt like, well, maybe this is the time to date. So I met a guy, started dating him again 4.5 years ago. But because of the circumstance for me and then for him, at the time, there were certain things that he needed that I wasn't able to be there for, and it was things I needed. So we just decided that that wasn't a good time. So here we are. Let's fast forward to a year ago. End up reconnecting. We've been kind of, talking, and nothing major really went on until the past, let's say, couple months, few months rather. And then the last month had kind of been a little bit heavier. So we introduced, mom, kids, that sort of thing. And I ended up, thinking that just, because this came back around, the way that it did, that, well, maybe this is meant to be, And I remember talking to my brother some time ago for the little bit of guy talk that he did give me. And he told me that women need to stop thinking that every man is their husband, and just because they're being nice to you or, just because it feels good at that moment, it doesn't mean that that's your husband, And because I grew up the way that I did, in a small town where, you really just didn't learn how to date. I mean, I've lived in two big cities. I lived, in Michigan near, Detroit area. And then I live, now I'm here in the Atlanta area. And it's like, there's so many people, you could be dating this person, that person, and you really can have a healthy time with dating. But because I never learned how to date, coming up the way that I did, and God forbid you be with this guy, at the game, or then you out to dinner next week with somebody else, you're being called a hoe or, whatever. And actually, you're not. You're actually okay to be able to go to the movies with a guy one week and go out to dinner the next day if you want with someone else, as long as you're not in a committed relationship. So aside from the fact of growing up and not having consistency when it came to having a father figure in my life on a consistent basis and having healthy representation of a male in my life, that tends to show up as we get older. My brother was my protector. That's what we did. We protected one another. We were raised to take care of each other. We weren't because we had to. You're talking a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old at home, waiting till her brother get home so that, and while mom is at work and dad was at work. So we grew up just literally taking care of one another, and that was what my mom instilled in him. So his way of protecting is more of a fear way of protection, I guess fearing you, scaring you or scaring whomever around you, in order for them to stay away, right? So while that is awesome and that's great, right? Because it probably protected me from some other situations taking place with me or could have happened to me. That wasn't all that I needed, you know? And so I know I'm kind of going back and forth with a few things, but it's all going to come together. Just hang in there with me. So anyway, back to the guy, you know, that came back in the picture. So again, I know zodiac signs aren't, everybody don't believe in them, and I don't study them, but I can say that there is some truth to a lot of what some of those signs are. So I'm a Capricorn, in which, you know, there's a lot of truth in what we are. You know, we're hot and cold, so we're either all or nothing. We're either team for you, or we're totally not on. You know, if we're on, we're on, and if we're off, we're off. And I mean, off is like you're almost dead to us, and that is not healthy, right? And then this guy is Gemini, so we know that they have their ways, right? So the struggle was a little real because I'm not, you know, I haven't been in a relationship for so long, and I have been single, and I am kind of set in my ways. And then, you know, he is, you know, the bachelor, and has had more experience recently with relationships and things of that nature and dating. So he's used to being a certain way, and then I'm used to being a certain way, and sometimes that clashed. So yesterday, so let's say Sunday, you know, he's a big sports fan, so it just went into him wanting to basically be to himself. But that was a whole day. So then the next day, when I decide to talk about it, then it escalated to almost an argument, pretty much. So now it's New Year's Eve, and we were having an argument, and then now guess who spends New Year's Eve by herself? Me. So it was such a sad day, right? Like, it was such a sad day, and it's so funny because just literally 7 days ago, it was like bliss, you know? So the way that life changes for us, it literally changes by the minute, you know? 1 minute you're anti-man and don't want no relationship and no parts of it and that sort of thing. And then next thing you know, you're, you know, all in and want to love and love hard, you know? So then the next minute your feelings are hurt. But there was some things, I'll say, what I do appreciate about my growth in maturing is that now at the age of almost 42 in 9 more days, I am so happy that God has made me wiser, you know, to understand my flaws and to understand where I'm not so great, you know. Like, sometimes we might get so caught up in ourselves and think, oh, I'm just so awesome and I'm so this and so that and I'm so different from all the other women, you know, that God quickly shows you that you're not really that great, you know. Like, you're great, but you're not flawless by no stretch of the imagination. Like, you have so much to learn, my child, you know. So I just literally cried the whole day because it was like, it was more of a grieving type of feeling. And it wasn't that like, my feelings was kind of hurt about the guy situation, but I also knew that it was what was best for now, because, you know, there are some things that I feel like we have to make adjustments when we're bringing another person into our world. The adjustments are necessary. Now, do we expect for someone to change who they are to be with us? No, that's not something that we should be requesting or that we should even expect. What we should expect is that if we're bringing someone into our world, that we're willing to make those adjustments. So now where we've been by ourselves, we have to consider this other person and consider their feelings, consider their needs, consider their wants. And I felt like I was doing that, but I also would get feedback from him that my expectations are just so high, so where he's thinking that he's doing these things of a token of appreciation, or maybe he's feeling like that he's giving me all the signs to show how much he's into me, and then I'm feeling like you're just not that into me, and so that upset him. And so the end result is us not communicating. Now, we're way too early in this thing for something like that to take place, right? So that to me in itself is something to analyze and look into. So as I was dealing with myself yesterday and dealing with my feelings and my emotions, I started to think about a lot of things. Like, a lot of stuff started to come out. Like things like, see, this is just why I don't date. This is why I don't involve myself with men. This is why I stay to myself. This is why, I just don't bother. Excuse me. So all that negativity just started, playing in my mind. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, whoa, you're not going to do this to yourself again, because you're bringing back emotions, and all these things that I thought that I had healed from are all things that I hadn't. So that was what I learned from this situation. So yeah, I could be upset about it or be upset with him, but at the end of the day, I have a lot of healing that I need to go through. And that's not fair to put someone else through that process. So with that, I said, okay, Lord, what is it that you want me to get from this so that I can be better? Because while I'm working on mental health and working on my physical health and working on my career and mothering and making sure that I'm doing right spiritually as best I can, because we're not all perfect, right? But just doing all the things that I feel like is necessary, to be a good citizen, right? Live a purposeful life and make sure that I'm helping others. And, you think about all these things, right? But we never take time to study about how to love, So what I have learned through the course of all these years at this stage in my life, I have realized that I have totally missed the love boat, right? So I have no clue how to love. Even though my heart is good and I have good intentions and I'm a giver and I think about other people a lot, even when they don't think I'm thinking about them, I have a lot of great things about me, but there are so many things that I'm not so great at. And love is one of them. So some years ago, a friend of mine had told me about a book called The 5 Love Languages. And she said, you need to read that because, it helped me in my marriage, And so I'm like, I never did, right? So I went on ahead and got it, downloaded the book. And so I read the first chapter. So what I want to do is, while I go through this journey of healing, I want to bring everyone along this journey with me in hopes that this will also bring about some support from other women and other men who also may be dealing with healing and not really knowing where to begin, where to start with it. And maybe it's a way for us to support one another to where we can bring love and support back into this world that we live in that have become so self-absorbed. Nobody has a book on it. What I do know is that my goal is to be married and be a wife. I have the family, I have the grandkids. One thing I haven't had is a husband. So that's something that I pray, that I could actually really be successful at, is a marriage. I know that no one goes into a marriage thinking that it's going to fail. However, I feel like if I can at least, study and learn about the things that make up a great person, and learn how to love other people and understand that everybody's love language is not the same. Like I was reading in the chapter, and it's like telling you, that, you may think that you're showing this person that you love them, and really you're not. You're not even hitting what their love language is. So if you're watching this and you want to go on this journey too, and you want to get that book and you start reading it, I'm going to take this time for myself to start healing. I have to heal in order for me to be free. There's so many hurts that is hindering me from having better relationships and healthier relationships. Some relationships I don't need, and that's fine. Some we don't need, but some we do. And some of them some of them may have been damaged just from things that I've said or my actions, things I've been through, which have kept me kind of in my own space, but I've been through too much for me to not give of me to the world. My mom had a big heart, and her passion was to just love. Man, if I could just love the way that woman loved, I would be so far ahead than where I am today. Because she just loved. But there's another part of my DNA that I have to fight against because of just all the dysfunction and the negativity and the, just all those things. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I am going to share some of my goals. I have 7 minutes left before I have to wrap this up, but I'm going to put the focus on healing, and whatever is meant to be for me is going to be. And I will not take this last experience as a negative and allow it to set me back, because that's not what I want. I do want to give of me and to be able to have healthy relationships. If that result in a marriage, that's awesome. If that just results in me having better relationships with my friends and my family, that embrace me and love me and who support me and who care about me, even if it's just mending those relationships, I feel like that is worth it. So I wrote down some things here